knowledge that I'm going to get and bring back. And 3 years ago, I stumbled upon this thing he's talking about, Twitter. And for some, it's just a social media network. For me, it's literally I go on Twitter to grow. And I don't do anything but follow other educators, not just physical educators, but well-known educators in the country and the world. And I use that platform to grow, and proudly people are growing from our things that we're doing in my classroom in our district. And that's, again, thanks to what I've been supplied with, which is the funds to get a projector system, funds to get a mounted projector that can showcase all these things that we're doing, and then also the funds to go to all these professional development conferences and grow and come back and help other people around me grow, and not just people in my own building. The 5 districts that we had come last year, which was very humbling for us, Wayzata, Edina, Maple Lake, I believe, Cambridge Isani, and one other, Forest Lake. And to have them in there, it was like, this is right. This is what we're doing. This is what we need to continue to do. And I'm going to keep doing it. And I appreciate all the support that you give, not just me, but all physical educators in our district, because through this growth on this platform that is Twitter and social media, I've realized that there's districts across the world and the country that get PE 1 day a week in elementary school and 2 days a week, and recess is being cut. And the fact that our district has it 4 days a week, 30 minutes at a time, makes me extremely proud to continue to grow and to showcase the benefits that physical activity gets for kids at the elementary level. And, you know, I just finished my master's program, and thankfully enough, future Dr. Booth was my professor in 2 of my classes. And one of my capstone was, can the implementation of added movement throughout the day have a positive effect on students' learning? And I always knew that it did, and the fact that my 2-year journey is now complete, it just makes me even more passionate and fired up to do what we do in physical education. And I just hope to continue to have that time in my classroom to give back to our kids. So thank you so much for all you do for us and all teachers and the kids and students in our district. So appreciate your time, and please, I would love it if anybody wanted to come by and pop in our gym and in our classroom and see what we do every day. So.
I think we owe you at least a stand.
Oh, jeez.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Shrink it back down.
I want to know what your Twitter handle is so we can all follow you.
It's really boring. It's at Mr. Spring PE. That's all it is.
Good. Easy to find. Good.
Congratulations, Rainey, and thank you for your passion.
Thank you for your time. Keep doing what you're doing.
Take care. All right, that completes our district highlights this evening. We're going to move on to 5.0, and that's public comment. At this time, individuals may speak to the school board on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. The board will not respond to or discuss your comments. Character abuse or any specified complaints identifying staff, students, task force members will not be permitted. The superintendent may be asked to prepare a response to your concerns, and our policy allows for 3 minutes. This evening I haven't had anyone sign up, but I figured I'd give it one last chance for anybody that would like to come before the board. Not seeing any. We'll move on to 6.0, and that's our consent agenda items. All consent agenda items are considered routine and non-controversial by the school board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items, but prior to this meeting, school board members have had the opportunity to review each of these items and may request that any item be moved to an action item for individual consideration. That has not occurred this evening, so I'll ask for a motion to approve our consent agenda items. Moved by Katie.
Second.
Seconded by Heather. Prior to me asking for a vote, I'd just like to remind the public that one of the items in our consent agenda item is 6.6.
Ron, I was going to ask you about that. That's normally your job, so I was going to be Ron tonight.
You want
and
to?
say, Ron, we should make sure to point out 6.6, the resolution of our gifts.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Heather then.
I don't know if I'm going to have it all, but they'll play after the meeting, correct?
Yep.
See? And that, I didn't look how much we had, though.
Well, I got that number.
Okay, good.
So for the last month in February, we had over $25,901 that were donated, which gives us a school year total through February of $597,088. And again, we just want to thank all those generous donors for all that, resources. But again, we always like to thank those folks that give up their time. Time doesn't show up on this piece of paper, but thank you for all that time and effort. And as Heather said, after the meeting tonight, quote unquote, the credits or the folks that have donated, their name will pop up. And if you see them out in the public, please thank them for us for the District of 833 and for our kids. With that then, all those in favor of approval of our consent agenda items signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to 7.0, and that's our workshop items. That's an item for our April 11th meeting. Moving on to 8.0, that's our information items. And 8.1 this evening is going to be a presentation for the Young Scholars Overview and Update. And Trina Patterson, our Educational Achievement and Integration Coordinator, will present.
Good evening, Vice Chair Kath, school board members, Superintendent Jacobus, and student representatives. I am here to introduce to you Colleen Redmond. Colleen, she leads our Young Scholars Program, and she has done so since 2016. As you know, the Young Scholars Program is one of the strategies of our Achievement and Integration Plan. Colleen has taught in South Washington County schools for over 25 years. Much of that time was spent in an elementary gifted cluster classroom, and more recently as a fourth grade teacher at Gateway Program. Colleen brings a great amount of knowledge to the program, and I'm excited for her to share with you about the Young Scholars Program.
All right. Good evening again. Thank you for your time tonight. And my name is Colleen Redmond, and I am the lead teacher for the Young Scholars Program in 833. And tonight I'd like to present to you some information about Young Scholars and the program's ongoing mission and progress. The primary goal of the Young Scholars Program is to recognize advanced academic potential in students from historically underrepresented populations, and then work to help students nurture their potential and grow as gifted learners. Underrepresented gifted learners have historically included culturally and linguistically diverse students, as well as students of poverty. Young Scholars is grounded in the fact that gifted learners exist in all languages, across all cultures, personality types, demographic groups, and segments of society. The program was originally developed in Fairfax County, Virginia in 2000 by Dr. Carol Horn, and was adopted here in 833 in 2016 as a way to address and close the inequities that exist between the demographics of students historically identified as gifted learners in 833 and the wider diversity of students in the district. Underrepresented gifted learners most often include students from Native American, African American, Hispanic, and low-income families. Because of this underrepresentation, many gifts and talents go overlooked and underdeveloped. In addressing the goals of Young Scholars, research shows that by increasing student experience with complex thinking skills at an early age, raising personal expectations, and partnering with families, opportunity gaps shrink for our culturally and linguistically diverse students, better preparing them to succeed in advanced courses in middle and high school. Young Scholars focuses on three main areas: increasing access to resources and experiences that nurture students' high potential, increasing affirmation and validation of students' potential in order to develop self-confidence and academic propensity, and increasing advocates to ensure that that potential is recognized and further developed. The goals of Young Scholars align strongly with 833's ongoing work with Dr. Hawley and culturally and linguistically responsive teaching methods, while also reinforcing the efforts of AVID. In addition, Young Scholars works to increase diversity of advanced courses in middle and high school by fostering student potential at an early age. This is Young Scholars' third year in 833, and it is currently located at Crestview Elementary in grades 1 through 4, and Hillside Elementary in 1st through 3rd grade. The process of identifying students as Young Scholars involves a variety of age-appropriate, complex thinking lessons taught by the Young Scholars lead teacher and observed by the classroom teacher. Lessons are based not on academic achievement, but on 4 different types of thinking skills: divergent thinking, convergent thinking, evaluative, and visual thinking. The opportunity for teachers to observe their students and notice and record these diverse gifted characteristics is one of the cornerstones of the Young Scholars program. These diverse characteristics show that gifted learners reveal their abilities through many different and sometimes unexpected ways. By being given the opportunity to observe students during Young Scholars lessons, teachers are able to better recognize the different ways students think through student conversation and from work, focusing not on the student's academic knowledge, but instead on the degree of complexity with which the student's brain processes the information. Students are then identified based on various criteria, including performance during Young Scholars lessons, teacher observations of diverse characteristics during lessons and also throughout the year, as well as recognizing which students show gifted characteristics and could most benefit from additional support in order to realize their advanced potential. Young Scholars has made encouraging progress in the past 3 years. Progress includes increasing access, affirmation, and advocates. For example, growth in the number of Young Scholars classrooms has gone from 6 classrooms in year 1 to 19 classrooms now in year 3. Increase in student opportunity includes now whole class, small group, and individual support based on the personalized needs of the Young Scholar. Parent support has increased to include a monthly online parent newsletter, including resources and opportunities to support their Young Scholars at home, as well as Young Scholar family nights that bring families together to share information and resources and build a strong supportive community for both the parents and the students. Young Scholar students also have the opportunity to attend a week-long STEM summer camp hosted by District 196. Young Scholars increases personal affirmation of students' potential through ongoing professional development around diverse gifted learner characteristics in order to recognize advanced potential in students from all cultures and linguistic groups. Since the beginning of the program, the demographics of identified Young Scholar students have closely matched that of the overall district diversity. In addition, the recognition and support gained through Young Scholars changes how students see themselves, increasing confidence and belief in their own potential. The Young Scholars program also seeks to increase advocates for students. Now, the greatest advocate a student can have is themselves. In order to make this possible, it is essential that students have strong adult advocates who believe in their potential and are willing to invest in their future. Since Young Scholars started in 833, the number of teacher referrals for gifted learner assessment overall at Crestview and Hillside has increased, as has teacher awareness and advocacy of high potential students in underrepresented populations. In addition, there is a growing interest in the Young Scholars program from parents and staff at other 833 schools. Young Scholar students are capable of amazing things: increasing access to challenging materials, affirmation of their abilities, and advocates who believe in them better ensures that these students have what they need to fully realize all they can do. Moving forward, my personal vision for the future of 833 Young Scholars includes continuing to expand within and also expanding beyond the 2 current Young Scholars elementary schools, expanding opportunities and experiences for Young Scholar students and families, as well as extending support beyond elementary grades so that Young Scholar students are set up for success as they move into advanced courses in middle and high school, continuing the work of 833 Young Scholars to help all students grow, develop, and realize their potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. With that, board members, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Michelle.
So you said, so it's grown from 6 to 19 classrooms?
Yes.
So could you talk about that? So it's not like an entire classroom isn't young scholars, it's just that they're served with, are young scholars in those classrooms, or?
Yep, and it's a little bit of both. So I begin the year serving the entire classroom as a way to identify the young scholars, so teaching the complex thinking lessons. And then those lessons actually continue because they're beneficial for all students. But then also during the and after the identification process, targeting the young scholar students as well. So I do work with the entire classroom and then also target
and then
the
kind
students.
of a target in that group.
Yes, yep, exactly.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was just wondering, as you think about growing the program into middle school, I mean, I know that's down the road a little bit, but what are you thinking about related to that, or what are there models out there of how the program has grown that way?
And I've also started already started discussions in that because it's not that far away. I have students now in 4th grade, so we're really looking at our group coming up in just a couple years. So starting the groundwork now is important. And currently, just in discussions we're looking at forming a partnership with the gifted education coaches within the building because that's just a natural fit. But then also working on professional development with the middle school staff so that they have the resources and the skills that they need and this awareness of the diverse gifted characteristics in order to support those students moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Well, again, thank you. There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to continue to be successful. I can just tell with the passion within your voice this evening. So congratulations on the success, and we'll look forward to even more success the next time you come before us.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Trina. Thanks, Colleen. With that, we can move into 8.2, and that's a financial update. That'll be presented by our Director of Finance, Dan Pyan.
Good evening, Vice Chair Kath, members of the school board, student members, and Dr. Jacobus. Tonight I'll be presenting our monthly financial update. See, Sharon's not here. I don't know if I need to tell a story or not. She's the only one that really wants to hear
You might
it.
be watching.
That's not true.
And I couldn't use the joke you use once a year around here that the Twins, I can tell you now, the Twins can sell beer at Target Field now because they did not lose their opener. But, so yeah, a quick baseball story. This man walks into a drinking establishment with a dog, and the bartender says, "You can't bring a dog in here." And he said, "Well, this dog can talk." And he said, "Well, I don't think so." He goes, "I'll give you $100 if that dog can talk." So he asked the dog, what's on top of the building, and the dog says roof. And he says, what's, covers the outside of a tree? And of course the dog says bark. And the bartender's kind of going, this is stupid. And then he says, who's the greatest New York Yankee baseball player ever? And the dog says, Ruth. And the bartender says, get out of here. So they leave the place, and they're walking down the sidewalk, and the dog turns to the owner and says, do you think I should have said DiMaggio? Anyway, the financial update, if you look in your packet, or at the PowerPoint if you're watching it, I did put a couple things in there for records so that people could refer back to them. The budget update as of 2/28/19, the end of the month last in February. We did run the numbers to see where we're at. In this report, you can see what happened for the year in 17, for the year in 18, and what's happened so far in 19, and what our budget is for 19. Now, what I do is I try to pick a target percentage of how long the year's lasted. So you would think that with 8 months it would be 0.67. However, It's only 57% of our budget should be used by now, because most of our salaries for teachers, we actually pay them from September through August. So we won't pay their last 2 months until after the financial year is done, but we will accrue it back. Anyway, the point being that the revenues, so far we received about 47% of our revenues. That's going to be normal because the state withholds 10% of the aid that comes in, and then they pay it back in the next fiscal year. And then as far as our total expenses, we're at about 56% against a 57% year-to-date number. So we're just right on expenditure-wise, and that's something we like to check just to make sure that the salaries aren't too far out of whack, that we might have missed, a department or something like that. And coming in at 53%, we're pretty confident with the salaries. The benefits are a little bit higher than we like to be at, but overall, we've spent 56% of our budget, and we should be spending about 57% of our budget. So even with all the winter bills we had this year, we're still doing okay. And the size of our budget, excuse me, is so big that a little percentage can mean a lot. And obviously just that 0.91% that we're ahead of budget by, it translates to about $2.3 million. So it can come and go pretty quickly. And then just for your reference, as you look at that, you can kind of see how our revenues have changed since from 2 years ago and from last year, and how our expenditures have changed in the same time frame. So our revenues have gone up over a 2-year period 8.92%, and our expenditures have gone up about.
You click the slide.
Oh, I forgot all about that. There we go. Sorry. And then our expenditures 8.66%. And as we look at our updates and try to figure the numbers, see how we're going to do, we always are looking at enrollment. And the enrollment is coming in lower than we have budgeted. And we're trying to figure out why and really what's going on, but we just have to be aware of that, and we just have to accept that as we do the revised budget, which will be the next board meeting. We'll bring you a draft of the revised budget, and then for approval in later April, and then we'll work on the new budget, and they get approved in June. But we're running behind, and we have budgeted 18,763 pupil units, or ADMs, average daily membership, and right now it looks like we're going to have about 18,512. That may go up a little depending on how many ADMs we get out of early childhood special education. So with that, being conservative, we'll probably ratchet down our revenues by about $2 million for the revised budget. Our enrollment has actually always gone up about 0.5 to 1% a year. This year it's going to drop a little, and then I don't see a big increase next year, but then as using the cohort survival method, it does seem to pick up a little bit more in the later years. We'll have a better idea of what new housing means to our enrollment once the demographic study is completed. It'll be part of the long-range facility planning process. And then we'll have we may be a little more aggressive on our budget enrollment. The remainder of the update, I just wanted to give you somewhat of some education on how things work in school finance and how it relates to South Washington County schools. I thought this would be, very interesting. It's interesting to me, but probably not to the other 90,000 people that live in this district, but it is somewhat interesting. So it's kind of school finance essentials, and just so you get an idea of some of the ways we look at the different numbers. So Minnesota school finance, all the districts use the same revenue and expense codes. It's called UFARS. We call it UFARS. It stands for Uniform Accounting and Reporting Standards. And I've worked in counties before, and we didn't have that luxury, and it was really hard to compare amongst counties of what people are doing. Everybody had their own system in place, and they were all audited separately. It's very nice that we can pull data and look at data from 340 different school districts. So that's one reason we do it. We all use the same codes. It allows for somewhat easy comparisons to other districts. Another important thing is it allows state lawmakers to track programs that they may have started or to see how expenses are going or where schools spend their money. They use a lot of that during the sessions as they pull reports for various things. The codes it's always 17 digits long, and it's broken out into fund and then the type of either expense or revenue or balance sheet, and then it has other codes, and we'll talk about a few of those. And we use over 20,000 different codes. We're trying to cut that down a little bit, but it's a lot of different codes that we use, and I think Chris knows what each one is. The codes represent different parts of how we account for finance. So we have different codes for funds, and a fund is really it's really the bank account, where the money's coming from. Yeah, as you know, we have the general fund, we have the food service fund, we have the community services fund, we have the construction fund, we have the debt service fund, and then we have an internal service fund. The one that we usually concentrate on and worry most about is the general fund, because the other funds are basically self-sustaining. They also represents the location, basically where the money was spent. The location could be anything from the district office to Liberty Ridge to East Ridge. The programs, it indicates a program, meaning it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, is this first grade? Is this building and grounds? Is this the superintendent's office? Or is this physics? I mean, it's really, we could break it down to that. And then we have what are called restrictions or purposes, and that's what's called the finance code, and that's what we're going to talk most about tonight is the finance codes. And those expenses are restricted. So any money that you have left over, you have to hold over for the next year. And then finally, the object code is basically the purpose or the reason for the expenditure. What are you spending it on? I think we talked a little bit. As we sort things out, I sort reports based on all these different things. We sort based on program codes. You know, what was the money spent for? Object codes, what did we buy? Location codes, where did it get spent? Obviously, finance code, where did the money come from? And fund, and it's really whose bank account is it coming from. So as we look at finance codes, the key finance codes that we run into, and these are all dictated by the Department of Education through laws made by the legislators, as they say, well, if we're going to give you money for this, you're going to have to spend it on this. And to prove it, we'll have to put it in a finance code so we can always find it easy later on. And like I said, we all use the same codes, so they don't have to call me to find out what we spent. They can just go online and pull the codes off, what we submit to the state. Some of the key finance codes are special education. It's kind of self-explanatory. Everything for special education that what we call is reimbursable, we code to a certain finance code. Operating capital, that's one that I talk about a lot. It's about $7 million for us, but it's money that's spent on long-term things or equipment or textbooks. Most things that, you know, I tell people you really should have a life of at least 5 years. Compensatory dollars, those are all based on your free and reduced lunch counts at the site. So they go by a concentration at a site. So they will tell us that your compensatory revenue is $3.8 million, and they'll also tell us this is where it's supposed to go. So much to Newport, so much to Crestview, whatever. And they base it all on the number of free and reduced kids at each site, and they use a concentration factor. Title dollars, those are all federal dollars. Those have very restricted uses to those. Safe schools is another one where we levy for safe schools. And that money can only be used for keeping the schools safe, whether it's an SRO or whether it's cameras or whether it's mental health professionals, things like that. Gifted and talented, we had talked about that tonight. That's another one that we keep a track of separately, and you'll see later on that the money coming in for that isn't near what we spend on it. Staff development, we're supposed to restrict part of our revenue and use it to for professional development for all our employees. In our case, we restrict about $2.6 million. LTFM, that's long-term facility maintenance. That's the newest program. It's some of the dollars are tracked in the general fund and some of them are tracked in the construction fund. Q Comp, which is a name that's in the manual, but it's also called ATPPS. And Kelly will talk a little bit about that later. And that's a program that we're approved for, and we do a combination of aid and levy. Achievement integration, it's an aid and levy program. Learning and development, and then everything else goes into Finance Code 000, and that's the unassigned. So the unassigned is all the dollars that have to cover for, as we look at where the money is spent. So just for example, if you look at our 18-19 budget, special education, our revenues are about $25.6 million, and the expenditures coded, just that finance code, are about $34.5 million, which is a deficit of $9.3 million. Now, our cross subsidy is actually higher than that because we have many special education expenses that don't go into that code. Operating capital, we have revenue of about $6.8 million and spend about $6.6. So we're kind of putting away so that $247,000, if it's left over, we have to hold it over for next year. Compensatory dollars, and that's a combination of compensatory and EL, the way they code it, and we have revenues about $4.2 million, and expenditures about $8 million. So as we talked before, there's also a growing cross-subsidy between what we get in EL, English Language Learning revenue, and what the expenses we need to pay for it. Title.
Dan, sorry to interrupt. One question I have around the expenditure side with the coding.
Yep.
Is there any way to code it from what's mandated and what's not mandated? Meaning, we have to do the program based on a mandate, or we're doing it because it's our district decision? Do expenses get split out in that capacity at all? Because you'll hear the terminology, we're the ones always saying we have all these expenses because they're unfunded mandates. Is there a way to really get to that true number?
Yeah, and I can't just simply say that whatever's in a finance code is mandated. I mean, special education is all mandated, but these other ones, they tell you where you're supposed to code the expenses, but they're not all programs that you have to do. But it's one thing, we can look at it, and as we look through the things, which things are mandated and which not. We know that the special education programs are all mandated. But yeah, it kind of comes in different points, but no, we've never really looked at it that way. Something to think about. Title and IDEA dollars are all federal dollars. IDEA is the federal dollars we receive for special education. So we receive about $4.2 million and we spend about the same. So we keep that one pretty tight. Safe schools. This is not only our safe school levy, but it's also 916 safe school levy. So we levy for 916 also. And all the money we collect for that, we send to 916. So we have revenues about $1 million and expenditures about the same. Gifted and talented is one in which we're only funded for $275,000 a year, and then our programs that we code to gifted and talented run about $900,000 a year. Q Comp, that's the one in which we'll talk. I think that's the ATPPS one. Our revenues are about $4 million and our expenditures about $4 million. LTFM, that one's a timing thing, but this year we have revenues about 5.8 and expenditures to 2.6. But the surplus we have this year is actually making up for a deficit from last year. Achievement and integration, another one that we basically spend everything that we get on that. Learning and development, we have to code a certain amount to that. And then all the others, there's a few more in there, is another $2.8 million in the expenditure side with no revenue following it. And some of those are probably some of the unfunded mandates that you're talking about. I'll look into more of those later. So really the bottom line is that of the restricted, we get $59 million in revenues, but we need to spend $71 million of it. leaving us with a deficit of about $12 million. And if you look at the unassigned, we have revenues of 180 million, and we spend about 168. So the unassigned is covering for those other programs. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering again back on the compensatory. So you talked about that. I mean, EL is a part of that, but so that's free and reduced lunch programs or federal programs. So that's a pretty big. I guess it's a pretty big line or a pretty big deficit. So could you talk more about?
Well, that's the way they have us coding all the EL programs to Finance Code 317. So most of the 317 finance codes are pretty easy to track as far as the revenues that come in, because it's about $3 million. And that all, just for the straight compensatory dollars. I mean, it's basically two different ways to look at it. For some reason, we use the same code for both, but the EL program is separate from compensatory dollars, and the compensatory dollars can only be spent according to statute. There's like 9 ways you can spend it. And those are all controlled by the principals, and they all have programs in place. So of the $3 million we get in compensatory, that all gets spent right away. And then the rest of the money in those revenues is the money we get for EL, but the rest of those expenses are everything we spend on EL. So that's really what's causing the gap. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I have a different question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me if we received any of the one-time Safe Schools grants?
We had one that
One
we
of 'em.
received, 120,000 or so.
And they were building specific, so it's,
Yes, that one was
yep,
building specific.
Yep. So that one is just for that particular building. I don't
Yeah.
remember which one it was. Was it Red?
Red Rock.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
It was, and we'll do the other buildings. It just kind of helps pay for some of it.
Yep.
So, and like I say, that when you look at from the finance code side, you can really see where we have to spend certain dollars, and then the rest of it is where you have more of the leeway. But some of these have-to programs, throw us into kind of a big deficit that we recover through the unassigned. And really, that's about it. Questions or comments?
No, thank you, Dan. Board members, any questions? Student reps, don't want to exclude you guys over there.
Did you have questions about the School of Finance?
Really?
All right, well, thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Yep.
We'll look forward to next month's joke to start us off with, so you've got time. With that, we'll move into our next information item, 8.3, and that's our ATPPS partnership with the Teaching and Learning Services. It'll be presented this evening by our Director of Teaching and Learning Services, Kelly Jansen.
Good evening, Vice Chair Kath, Superintendent Jacobus, board members, and student representatives. I'm excited to be here this evening to talk with you about the partnership between TLS and ATPPS, or as Dan mentioned, it's often referred to as QComp. It's been wonderful coming into the district and working with this group of teachers. They really are there for each other, and they're there to build each other up, and so it's been fun watching and having conversations about how we can expand this. ATPPS, as Dan mentioned, is a program that's funded, it's through the Department of Ed, that's funded through state aid and local levy. I know I was killing him not to tell you the percentages because I just asked him. So it's about 70% state aid and about 30% local levy. The goal of the program is to increase student achievement by supporting the development of teachers, as I mentioned. And there's many facets to the program, and we're going to focus on one tonight, but I wanted to list what other things come through ATPPS. Peer observations, job-embedded professional development, performance pay for reaching student achievement goals. There are some teacher leader stipend positions, and then teachers on special assignment in the student achievement positions, or SASs, you'll hear me refer to tonight. So with the increase in the levy that you graciously voted for last year in December, ATPPS have been able to work together collaboratively and strengthen the instructional coaching piece of the ATPPS QComp grant. And so our goal is that 3.0 FTE we currently have in elementary SASs will be 8.0 FTE, and our secondary SASs that are currently at 3.5 FTE will be 7.0 FTE. With the increase in the levy and a little restructuring of a few of the stipend positions, we were able to fund more of those positions. And some funding is also coming from my TLS department and some of the TOSA positions that I had as well. So it truly is a partnership. Our goal with that is to strengthen our instructional coaching model by having more time and more flexibility and availability to work with teachers. So as you can see with the 8 FT in elementary, our goal is that a SAS will have 2 elementary sites, and our secondary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools will have a 1 FTE, and then we're going to work with our alternative center and Next Step and how we can support them with the instructional coaching model as we move ahead as well. These are the duties of the Student Achievement Specialist. You will see there's a lot of things that they do to support implementation or things happening in their schools. They are a leader in staff development opportunities. They are a leader in interpreting student data, especially as it relates to students needing interventions. They coordinate assessments, our MCAs, our NWA MAP testing, our ACT, our pre-ACT. They support standards-based instruction and standards-based progress reporting. And they support any curriculum initiatives. So for example, Bridges, our SASs did a lot of work with Bridges implementation last year, and we had 3 elementary SASs for all the buildings that implemented Bridges. So this will be a huge help to those implementation supports as well. As you can see, the bullet that I colored there is the provide instructional coaching. Because this isn't new, this has always been a part of the SAS position. There wasn't enough time and flexibility in their schedule to get it in, so that's what this increase in FTE is going to do. And the instructional model we're working toward shares the attributes you see on the screen. It truly is a partnership. The teacher has volunteered or wants and asked for this coaching. You'll read a lot of articles about instructional coaching. Michael Jordan had a coach, Tiger Woods had a coach. The best surgeons ask other surgeons to watch them, and so that drive to get better, and that comes from the teacher. The teacher's knowledge is clearly valued, and the coach then has that knowledge and evidence-based practices, and then together they have that conversation about what the teacher knows about their students and what the coach knows about instructional practices. So they think together, they share ideas. We built a lot of this on Jim Knight's philosophy of coaching. He calls it dialogical coaching. It truly is a partnership. And in the end, we are accountable to the students and the student achievement in the classroom. So it really is an amazing relationship. And again, like I said, this is a nod to what our SASs are doing in our current SASs. That we needed more SASs to be them because people really appreciated the work that they were able to bring to the buildings. So we're excited to support that model for coaching. As I mentioned, it is a partnership. Tim Bunnell, who is the chair of the ATPPS committee and the teacher on special assignment that coordinates the entire ATPPS program, wasn't able to be here tonight. He was planning on it, and then something came up. But Marty is here as well. She serves on the committee. We have a lot of great other great teachers that have good conversations, and Dr. Jacobus serves on the committee. So it really is a partnership between administration and teachers, all for the betterment of our students. So we are very excited, and thank you for agreeing to increase the levy. We know it will be good use, and it'll be truly a teacher supporting teachers program. So.
Well, thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
With that, any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Heather?
So I think I know the answer to this, but if we saw the value of more coaches, we could just choose to budget for that, right? They don't have to be through this program. Correct. Because we're in QComp. They don't have to be paid through that.
Right, absolutely. And that's where some of the FTE that I had available with some of the TLS restructuring is going to be used to round out that number so that our elementary SASs in particular can can manage 2 sites. So yes, I would love to get to a model where we have more, and it'll just take time to grow there.
Okay.
Thanks. So there's a lot of acronyms. I know. so I just want to make sure. So essentially, it looks like we were hiring 8.5 student achievement specialists, right? We're going from 3, or at least FTEs, 8.5. So there's 3 to 8, 5 at the elementary level, and 3.5 more at the secondary level, I think, on the little graph.
I'm going to trust your math.
Yeah. So, but those are FTEs. Are they positions? Are there some of them half?
They are full-time.
They're all full-time
SAS positions. There's other TOSA positions within other departments and within ATPPS, but the teacher on special assignment positions. So these are specific to that student achievement specialist.
So are the student achievement specialists licensed teachers?
Yes.
And are they currently in our schools?
Yes.
And they bid into this? Is this a bidding?
This is an interview process.
Okay.
But it is only open internally.
Okay.
So, and part of the job description mentions proven experience. So we're looking for teachers who have proven experience in the classroom, taken on some leadership initiative, but it is a interview process, and it's not a automatic yearly. We'll look at it every year and see, is this working for the teacher, is this working for the school? So
do they report up through you, or how do they, through the principals at the schools, or how does that?
They'll be directly in TLS, so they'll be with me. However, I will work with the principals on the evaluations, which what I do normally when we have TOSAs that are between district and buildings. So we'll work together on the evaluation process.
So they don't work with students, they work with teachers?
They could work with students.
Okay.
They could certainly be modeling. They could certainly be showing how small groups can work. That could be part of that, that partnership of working together. They could go into a teacher's classroom while they went and observed another teacher that was doing what their goal was. So they could certainly be working with students.
Okay, because I know we've been looking at where are all our licensed staff. So, in terms of just wondering where, how that was and how that worked. And so, and then teachers requested this, as we grew this because teachers wanted this additional support and coaching.
Yeah, there really is a drive. Our teachers do want to do well. They really, I look at for example, we put in a bridges, in year 1 you can be at this level, and so many of our teachers they want to be at that great level, that level 4, and so a lot of our teachers there is some instructional coaching happening in the district right now. Some schools have been able to fill out certain positions, but there isn't a district model that we provide PD on, professional development for people in this model. So that's what our goal is with this. And a true coaching model is that it's voluntary for that teacher to say, I really want to get better in this, or I'm not understanding why my kids aren't doing this. And then that just becomes a conversation between the coach and the teacher.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
So any other questions or comments? All right, well, thanks again,
Thank
Kelly.
you. Yeah, appreciate you.
With that, we'll move into our last information item this evening. That's 8.4, and that's a negotiation update. That'll be presented by one of our school board members, Heather Hirsch.
Yes, so I am giving the negotiations update for this meeting, but I will say I was not at the negotiations meeting, so I appreciate the information provided to me. But I did say, I did think it was important that we give the update, and so then that got me voted as the person giving the update. So I tried to give it to Michelle, and she declined. Just kidding. But so the negotiations teams did meet for a second time, both obviously South Washington County Schools and the United Teachers of South Washington County met. They met in February to sort of set the schedule and establish guidelines, and we met in March, just last week, I believe. And the discussion at this first meeting, well, second meeting, but our first sort of real meeting, centered on the on getting the initial contract proposals from UTSWC and the subsequent meetings will be sort of going back and forth between the two negotiations. Shelley's probably cringing because she wrote me a very nice statement and I'm not following it. But the discussions will continue, and we do hope as a board, we do have a site under the school board tab on the website that now lists information. It has all of the board members and district staff who are part of the negotiations team. It has our schedule on it. And I do feel strongly that we do put our proposals up there so that the community is aware of what we are talking about in negotiations. And we've also, both parties agreed to negotiations guidelines, which I think are also important for our teachers and our community to understand that we are going into this as grown-ups. We understand this is a professional situation, that we're discussing kind of how this is going to work together, and that it's a partnership. So I want our community members and our teachers and our other staff to know that this is something that we're taking very seriously and that is very important to us. We'll continue to provide, probably me, regular updates at the school board meetings as we continue. And our future dates for negotiations include April 4th and 24th, May 13th and 28th, and June 5th. We scheduled through basically the end of the school year at this point, but certainly reserve the right to continue meeting in negotiations if needed. So that is the negotiations update.
All right. Well, thanks, Heather. With that, we can move on to 9.0, and that's our discussion items. We do not have any this evening. So we can move into 10.0, and that's our action items. Our first action item is 10.1. That's the approval of the Nutrition Services Agreement. That'll be presented this evening by our Director of Human Services, Kevin Witherspoon.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to seek approval of the Nutrition Services Contract, negotiations towards a new collective bargaining agreement between the South Washington County Schools and the Nutrition Services United Here. Union Local 17 have resulted in a 2-year tentative agreement effective July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2020. Members of the bargaining unit approved the tentative agreement on February 27th, 2019. And I'll just go over a little bit of the costing models, wages and benefits. So if you look at the where it says current, that's the current wages of these 3 positions. If I don't know about you, I have to turn the page, but projections for 2018-19 and then 19-20. And so if you look at a cook manager, currently makes $16.70 in step 1. They'll move to $17.99, and then they'll actually stay the same then for $17.99 for the 19-20 school year. So those are the only 3 positions that there was additional pay. For longevity pay, at their 10th year of service and thereafter, employees will receive 10 cents per hour each year to a cap of $1.25 an hour. And then effective July 1st, 2019, and thereafter, employees will receive 25 cents per hour starting on their 5th year of service, with a 5 cent per hour increase each year after until their 9th year of service. And then it will go to 10 cents per hour, but the cap is $1.50 an hour. Employees who are floaters, which are employees who move to multiple locations to fill in where they're needed, will receive premium pay, so an extra 50 cents an hour worked. It's an incentive to get people who would want to be that flexible in their schedule. So health insurance, there is no changes to the district contributions and no changes to the VEBA. For other benefits, we aligned the contract in terms of personal days with all of our other contracts. So the nutrition services had 2 days, and now they'll have 3. And then finally, there was a one-time bonus on the day the contract was ratified. Part-time employees will receive $75 one time, and full-time employees will receive $125 one time. The administration recommends approval of the proposal.
Thanks, Kevin. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Nutrition Services Agreement.
So moved.
Moved by Michelle.
Second.
Seconded by Heather. Any questions or comments? Not seeing anything. All those in favor of approving the Nutrition Services Agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Motion passes. Thanks,
Thank
Kevin.
you.
Moving on to 10.2, if you recall, we amended our agenda to add this item. This is the approval of a revised 2019-2020 calendar. And Dr. Jacobus will be presenting this evening to us, and he promised me that hopefully this will be the last time. We have to approve a change to the 1920 calendar, but we're going to try to hold them accountable to it. So,
all right,
Dr.
thanks.
Jacobus?
Well, we did originally approve this calendar on April 26th, 2018, so almost a year ago. And then we came back in March of this year, March 7th, and modified based on some feedback we received from teachers and some improvements we were looking at for the 2021 calendar and put it in the 1920. After this came about, then we received notification from the county that there will be a presidential primary next year on March 3rd. And since we worked so hard to take a look at our election on the November election day, not to hold school because we're polling places at 14 different schools, and it's very difficult to secure our schools when the public is in for the polling places. I have been asked, can we request that we're not used as polling places, and we can't. There is, with the statute, you have to have a place large enough in a central location, and our schools are the place that works well. So we went back and proposed altering the calendar for next year to accommodate that primary. So on our current calendar, in the first week of March, the March 2nd week, the Friday right before spring break, that is currently a teacher work day. That's one of the work days that we put in for the calendar next year. Then we go on spring break. We come back on a Monday, and we have a professional development day for the teachers. So what we're proposing to accommodate the primary is to take the Friday and hold school on the 6th, because that's the exam week for high schools, and we need to finish that trimester. Tuesday, we would have no students in the school for the primary, but we would move the professional development day to that day, Tuesday. So we wouldn't have kids on Tuesday, we'd have a professional development day. Then we would finish on Friday with a typical student day, have our spring break, and then when we came back on Monday, that would be the teacher work day. And the work day is after the trimester gets finished, because there's grading to finish and grades that are due. And so those changes would then accommodate the presidential primary. And I hope that would be our last change. One of the things that this has been out, we're hoping that we wouldn't have a lot of spring breaks a year in advance that where students might leave the 6th, but we also have students that leave a day or two early every single year, where we can accommodate that and work through it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jacobus. With that, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised 2019-2020 calendar with the dates that Dr. Jacobus presented.
So moved.
It's moved by Katie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Michelle. Any comments or questions?
Just one question. So this was all approved by the teachers union, and we're all good?
Oh, we met as a calendar committee
Okay.
this week too.
Okay.
Yeah, when this came up.
Okay.
And I should tell you, apparently this law changed in 2016, but that's not on our radar. That's part of the county, and they let Dana know after the first reading, and so it just was. And it's not their fault either. It's nobody's fault, but so this is new this next year.
Yep. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. All those in favor of the approval of the 2019-2000 calendar signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? Motion passes. That concludes our action items this evening, so we can move into 11.0, and that's our reports and comments. Our first report is 11.1. That's our superintendent's report.
Well, let's talk snow and snow days. So there were, in the House and the Senate, there were two different versions of a snow day bill to help schools take a look at the severe weather closures that we had this year. And this week, the Education Conference Committee reached an agreement with the two different proposals on how school districts can address the unexpected winter closures for this year. So the following are key highlights. The school board in each district may count instructional days that were canceled due to health and safety concerns as instructional days for purposes of calculating the number of hours and days required by law. There is no limit on the number of canceled days that a school may count. So for all the days we closed, if we needed to, if we were under the requirement, you as a board could vote to call those instructional days, and we would not be required to try to make those up or have any other consequences. Other highlights: if the school district would not otherwise have met and required a number of days, with the number of days and hours, the district must report to the commissioner the hours that we would be forgiving, so to speak, or not making up. We're 6 hours short at the secondary level, and so that would be, and I'll explain where we might go with this. Then we'd report to the state. There's other provisions to make sure that if people were unable to work and unable to be paid, that everyone is paid for those days, that there isn't a negative consequence for our staff, which we have things in place to take care of that internally. But there's also provisions that if you contract with different vendors and they were unable to be paid because of that unexpected closure, we would need to work with them. And we have some things that we would work out with our contracted busing, but we can take care of that. So all of this has to be approved by a full vote and then be signed. But as soon as, by the governor, he has been supportive of helping districts work through this. So as soon as that would come forward, what I'd like to ask tonight is for some informal consultation. What I'd like to do when it is approved at the state level, bring a recommendation to allow us to stay on the calendar we have, not try to make up the days. I did give you a suggestion on how we might make up a day, but after that, as we got into some contracts, that day won't work very easily, so we're left with, if we wanted to make up the time, probably adding days, and you had a pretty good discussion about, or minutes to the day, I should say, about that not working. So my recommendation is we would not try to make up those 6 hours at the secondary for this year, given this flexibility. So I just want to find out if that's something you'd be opposed to or in agreement once this is all finished at the state level.
All right, thanks, Keith. Well, I'll open it up to my colleagues here. Any feedback for Dr. Jacobus?
I'm fine. It's 6 hours, and not being able to do it as a whole day and just being able to add minutes doesn't help a lot. Adding a few minutes to the end of a day, I mean, what are you talking? Maybe a minute to each classroom period isn't going to give much at the secondary level where we're short. So I think just for this year, the 6 hours is fine.
Michelle, yeah. Heather, good? Yeah, I think, Keith, from my perspective too, I brought up at the last meeting, adding the minutes isn't going to help anything, and I'm pretty confident that our teachers have made up the difference. Again, I've never been a believer, seats in a desk don't really mean anything. It's what you do with the time you've had, and there's no doubt in my mind that the staff took care of those kids, and we'll get them to where they need to be. So I guess what I'm hearing is you have unanimous, at least with a quorum. So I don't know about the three that aren't here, but at least you know you have a quorum to move forward with that proposal. That's right.
The other thing is the state encourages districts to look at that flex learning day. They call them E-days. We are going to look at a flexible learning plan, and we're working through that for that application. That'll give us flexibility then next year should we have this, and if weather patterns continue that way. And we want to call them flex learning because it doesn't necessarily, that means that if we move in that direction, it's tied to a device. Depends, it's age group appropriate, it's what teachers are doing that will be most meaningful, so thanks. Next, I wanted to give you a Spark update. Last fall, we initiated the Spark program with the intent of asking our staff what areas of concern or improvements they would like to see addressed in our system. After soliciting ideas from all employees, we opened a voting system to surface the most supported ideas in the small, medium, and large category. In all, we had 128 unique ideas that were submitted, and we had 55,328 votes that were cast. The top ideas were revealed in December, and the next step in the process was to convene a design thinking team for each idea. On Wednesday, March 20th, staff members from a variety of positions in South Washington County Schools met to start the design thinking phase of Spark. Those 30 staff members are now our designers who will work in teams to explore the top small, medium, and large Spark ideas. The small idea, just as a reminder, was converting documents to working electronic documents. The medium idea was restructuring conferences and making those more meaningful for staff and parents. And the big idea was addressing the growing mental health needs. The members of the design teams either contributed to the top idea in each category or have been trained in the human-centered design thinking process our district has used in the past few years. At the first meeting, the designers selected one of the following ideas to work on. The first step in the design thinking process is to interview people impacted by the ideas. Design team members will spend the next month gathering information and stories from people impacted by the idea. These stories will help our designers understand the impact of the issue and will form the basis of how the idea might be implemented. Design teams will meet again in April and share the stories and insights they gained from the interviews, and from there they will evaluate the possible solutions for the issue or ways to improve the process submitted. We will continue updating staff members on the progress of the Spark design teams this spring. And I'd like to thank Brian Booth. Brian has coordinated the work with the design thinkers, and the first meeting was really interesting and set the stage to remind the people who have been trained in design thinking what we're looking for in that creative thinking. We watched some TED Talks and some different areas to spark the thinking, and then some of the new people who haven't gone through design thinking, then they went through some of the process. And I also want to thank our staff. We had over 40 people volunteer their time freely to be involved. So there was an excitement. So from here, once we finish this and look at the implementation, that then will jumpstart into the next year. So we hope to continue the Spark program for years to come and grow that program as it becomes more on the forefront of folks' minds, and they see how their ideas and their work can be implemented to change the culture.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jacobus. Any comments or questions? Just one quick question, I think, or comment. I think you and I were the only two with this winter that were happy.
Yes, I love
it. Dr. Jacobus being an avid cross-country skier person, and myself, avid snowmobiler, I thought it was a great winter, but I know I'm in the minority pretty sure there.
Yeah, I didn't like closing the schools, but I loved all the snow, and this is the perfect kind of winter to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you guys agree?
All right, we'll move on to our school board student reports, and we'll start with Eastridge High School, and that's Hannah Poor.
Hi. So at Eastridge, we've had a lot of sports updates. We had our boys basketball team go to state, and we got 4th place. And it was the first time in our entire history that we've ever gone to state, so it's super impressive that we got 4th place. So it was awesome. And then our Thunderbolts adaptive floor hockey team got 2nd place at state, which is super cool for them too, because I don't think they've gone to state before either. Oh, they have. Never mind, they have. Oh, yuck. I remember last year they did. And then our Key Club is having a blood drive again, which is super awesome because we always end up donating a lot of blood at those. And then prom is coming up soon, and so we had this fundraiser called Fairy Tale Fashion for Food come, and it was basically it's this company, and they bring a truck, and actually I think it's like district resource truck or bus, but it's very cool because they bring all these dresses and we sell them, and then it goes to the food program, and it did very well, I think. And then our 10th graders are taking MCAs right now, and some of them are happy about it and some of them aren't. But that's a fun time. Our district orchestra festival is happening at 4 p.m. at Woodbury. And then our district percussion is having a concert at 7:30 at the Loft Stage on April 9th. We're having a fine art showcase on April 11th at 6 p.m. And all of our spring sports are in effect now. And our Eastridge speech team is sending 10 speakers to the state tournament, which is really a very large number for our school.
Great. Well, thanks, Hannah. With that, our Park High School representative is Lindsay Storm.
All right.
Storm, sorry. No.
He's neighbors, and he can't even get my last name right.
Well, I haven't been in this position for a while.
Okay, so we have now started our 3rd try, so my final try of high school, so kind of bittersweet. What's coming up for us is on April 5th, Student Council is also hosting another blood drive. The Red Cross reached out to us because it's been such a harsh winter that they've needed to have more blood, so they reached back out to us, and we had a great turnout in the fall, so we're hoping for another great turnout on April 5th as well. And then on April 2nd, we are having our annual IB art show. And if you ever go, it is the best art show ever. And all of them are made by high school students, and it's just super cool. This weekend is a robotics competition at Mariucci Arena, and they are there today, tomorrow, and Saturday. And our school was invited to go on Saturday, so I think Thursday and Friday are just like competition type things. And then as spring sports are coming in, I just came from softball before this meeting. We actually have our first game tomorrow, so we gotta jump start instead of shoveling off our field twice like last year. So spring sports are in action, and we had many teams outside today, and it's been great.
Thanks, Lindsay. And our white bear, jeez, I am just fading quick. Woodbury High School, and that's Mara, sorry.
Trimester 3 just started, just like everyone else in the district, and we're at the point where the dust is beginning to settle and everyone's getting back into the swing of things. Spring sports start next week. They have their first games. Choir is currently on tour in San Francisco, and the orchestra just got back from their trip to Chicago. Our speech team qualified 5 people to the national tournament in Dallas, Texas, as well as several people just like Eastridge to state, and we tied with Eastridge second at the sections tournament, which was really fun. And then we hosted the free self-defense class I talked about last meeting this past Friday, and there were roughly 40 people in attendance. It was a very cool event. And looking ahead, we'll be hosting the first ever TEDx event at our school on Saturday, April 9th. The theme is the spirit of inquiry, and admission is free. Dr. Jacobus will be speaking. And then the following week after that is prom on the April 13th, and the theme is Under the Stars.
Thanks, Mia. Thank you to all of our board reps for those great updates. With that, we can move into 12.0, and that's our future meeting dates. 12.1, that's April 11th. That's a regular school board meeting here at the District Service Center at 6:30 p.m. Moving on to 12.2, that's April 25th, the next regular school board meeting at the District Service Center at 6:30 p.m. And before I adjourn the meeting, I just want maybe the folks in the public that were watching tonight, you noticed all this art that was up behind us. What impresses me about this art, it's all elementary students that brought this art. So if you have a minute and you can sneak down here and come into our District Service Center, we have this throughout the whole office complex here within the main hallways, so you really don't need to buzz in or to get to see it. It's incredible. I'm always humbled when I come in and look at that. Like, there's no way I could ever do that. And these are elementary students. So if you got the opportunity, please come and enjoy that art that our students brought forward. With that, then, 13.0 is adjournment. Thank you, everybody.